This week in a conversation, I have a very nice treat for you. I was speaking with a prolific writer from Southwestern Michigan, Samantha Moran. We're going to be talking about her multi-genre literary works. She's very prolific. And also she has an upcoming book. She's going to be talking about it also. And But before we get into this very interesting conversation with a prolific writer, Samantha Moran, I just want to remind you of my own literary journey, of my latest novel, Bittersweet Memories of Last Spring, published back in September. If you have not gotten a copy of it, I'm encouraging you to do so. And I also want to let you know, just like I've been telling everyone, for every episode, that it can be found everywhere they sell books, including Walmart. So, yeah, get yourself a copy and also encourage your friends to do the same also. And don't forget to continue to lend your support behind the conversation, one of your best literary shows out there on YouTube. Okay? So, without further ado, let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, and I'm here this evening with an impeccable author. I'm here with author Samantha Moran. She's joining me from Southwestern Michigan, and it's an honor, a pleasure for me to welcome Samantha Moran and the conversation. Welcome, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Okay, Samantha, this is something I always do every time I have an author and a conversation. Would you please tell the audience of CSMS Magazine who is Samantha Moran?
I started my writing career as Beautiful Chaos author. I didn't have my name on it because my life is beautiful chaos. I am a teacher, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a writer, I'm a multiple sclerosis warrior. I live with MS every day. I'm a proud graduate of Western Michigan University, and I'm a perfectly flawed human being. That's what I tell people. So a little bit
But
of
some
everything.
things, Samantha, in literature, blood characters, the ones that the readers want. So,
Mhm. They're
so
most relatable.
yeah, exactly. So, that's what makes us humans, right?
Mhm.
Because we're not perfect. Whoever, pretends to be perfect, moves from flaws to flaws.
Yeah.
So, Samantha, yes, we're going to be talking about so many genres that you are familiar with. You have also proven yourself that you are capable of doing, of writing in them.
Thank you.
But before we get into that, Samantha, I have one question for you.
Mhm.
I know that you have an upcoming book, and also you do have a very important book signing set for February 4th. And
I
the
do.
title of the book is Stages of Grief, a short story.
Um, Stages of Grief was the first work that I published, actually. This came out officially in July. The
Okay.
one that's coming out soon is called Without You. I only
Oh,
have the
without you. Yeah,
proof
okay, I
copy.
got that. Yes.
And then there's also, so I've got them all behind me. So I've got Tales of Grief and Healing that has both of these two stories in it. So that's coming out on the same day.
Wonderful. Okay. So, okay, now my question is, Meta. So you have two books coming out on the same day. So how do you divide the your time promoting two books simultaneously?
Well, this book, Tales of Grief and Healing, is a compilation because these two stories are short. So it's just these two stories put into one. So when I'm working on marketing and trying to get it to the right audience, mostly I'm talking about these two stories. And then when they're ready to pick this one up, I just say, this is these two stories in one convenient place. I have a lot of friends that would like to own it, but wanted it all in one book. So I made it available for them that way. These are small.
Mhm.
Sometimes people would prefer to have the thicker binding. That's why I did it.
Well, it depends. You see what I mean? And of course, there's another element added to this too. If I may, compliment what you just said. when it comes to book, publishers, the more voluminous a book is, the more expensive it gets when it comes to production. So that's why I always see publishers open, that are open for submission, but
Yes.
also they have this particular red line and they said, you know what, no more than 100,000 words. I know
Yeah.
exactly what they're talking about. Is that
Yeah.
the reason why you decided to publish smaller?
Part of it is that I want my works to be accessible for everyone. And as someone who has grown up without a lot of money in my background, something like this is a whole lot easier for a reader to get a hold of sometimes than something like this.
Sure.
But something like this is a little bit cheaper to produce, so that way they can kind of get more value for their money, if they want to buy them both at the same time. But ultimately, it's just I want them to have more access to things. My stories are for people. I'm not worried about what I make off of the stories. I'm worried about what people get out of them. And so the more accessible they are, the more people will pick them up.
And you know what? It's for all of us as
Mhm.
writers. You know, the more people who can get their hands into our literary works, I think the more powerful it becomes. Because we write because we want to immortalize, ourselves and our writings. Because 1,000 years from now, someone can still pick up stages of grief and, of course, learn from it long
You know,
after.
I never thought I would actually publish anything. I didn't have faith in myself as a writer for a very long time. I was afraid. And then I realized that a lot of people feel the same way that I do. The stories that I write will connect with a lot of people and they might need to see it. So I did it anyway. And I can connect with these people long after I'm gone. I can help these people with my tales. So it's my favorite thing about writing.
Exactly. And let's begin with stages of grief. Could you please tell us a little bit about the stages of grief?
Sure.
You're
So
not going to tell the plot now, okay? So
no,
just,
no, no.
yeah.
Stages of Grief is very short. The actual content of the story is about 29 pages. And the story kind of came into my head right before Halloween last year. I
Okay.
just had a new baby and I needed to
Okay.
have some creative outlets that weren't just being mom. And
Okay.
so I was sitting in the living room and I love to decorate my house for Halloween. There's decorations everywhere. If you
Okay.
can't tell, I'm a little bit of a spooky person.
All
And
young mom love that. I know that.
so I was staring at the Halloween decorations and going, you know what? I want to write a story
Mm,
about loss because this time of year has so many connotations in it that are, I don't know, cinematic or
right.
just for pure shock value
Mhm,
around Halloween.
mhm,
And
mhm.
I wanted something that had a little bit of a twist to it, but also was so innately human.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I wrote Stages of Grief, sitting on the couch, and I said, John, that's my husband's name. John, I have an idea for a story. And he's like, all right, bye,
Okay.
go.
Okay.
you know? So I just
Okay.
disappeared and I wrote one chapter a week for 5 weeks.
Mhm.
I originally pushed it out on my blog and then edited it and did all the design work and the formatting and put it out here. Basically, it's about two characters, Casey and Owen, who
Mhm.
are called down to the morgue to identify a body.
Wow.
And they find someone very close to them on that table. And it's
Mhm.
about how they process those 5 stages of grief,
Wow.
and how they do it differently, but ultimately have to come to the same conclusion. So,
That's pretty deep.
yeah,
Now,
the next one gets even deeper. So,
okay, can you please tell us, without you, a little bit?
sure. So this story
Okay,
primarily
yeah, go ahead.
focuses on Casey, who is one of the two main characters, whereas this one primarily focuses on Owen, who
Mhm.
is the other main character from Stages. So this is number one and number two.
Right.
Um, and Without You is about how to live once that person is gone, once you've accepted their absence. And so, you
Wow.
go through the motions and you live your day-to-day life and you go visit their memorial, then you have to go to work and then, you go visit them again. And then you have to do things at your apartment and how overwhelming it can be. And, how your emotions go up and down and up and down. And then one day you're fine and it's awful that you feel fine. And then one day you're fine and it's okay that you feel fine. And it's just that human journey, because just
True.
accepting that someone's gone does not fill
True.
the void that they've left behind.
Exactly. And I
So,
always say that um, a deceased person the pain has literally left the pain, because when you die, you die. The pain is left for your survivors, the survivors, because you know they're the one who's going to have to carry the burden of your legacy.
Yes. And it's difficult. There's no right way to do it. There's no right amount of time to do it. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of people think that, after a while you should just be okay again. And that's not how it works. I lost my grandma in 2010.
Right.
She's a big part of the reason that I wrote these stories. It's my processing of her and the processing of other people that I've lost. I mean, it's 2023 and I still have a hard day on the day that she left. So, there's no set amount of time. There's no right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Let
It's
me
just
let me ask you a question, Samantha. Do
Mhm.
you find it's more comforting when you're writing about grief and sorrow?
I think it's very hard to do in the moment. There's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of emotions that come up while you're writing, but then
Mm-hmm.
when you look back through it and you read it as a solid piece and
Mm-hmm.
you identify so much with the characters that you've created and the struggles that they're
Mm-hmm.
going through, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a great way to process that trauma and
Mm-hmm.
to help other people process that trauma too. So, one of the things that I wrote in
Mm-hmm.
Without You, I've got a quote, was death is meant to be a permanent departure. It's a person-sized hole punched into the fabric of the universe at which we
Right.
stare until we can no longer make out the edges.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when I wrote these books, I had to stare at it again.
Mm-hmm.
I had to think about it. And it's, it shows you how much you've moved on. It shows you where you're still stuck. It's, it's like holding a mirror up to yourself in a way that you never expected to.
Okay, let me ask you a question now. Without You, is that a character-driven story where the
It's
protagonist tells his own story?
Yeah, Without You covers Owen's life over the course of a year
Mhm.
after the person's death.
Okay.
And so it starts out kind of closer together at the beginning, and then the events kind of spread out more and more as the year goes on because the
Mm.
grieving process becomes a little less prevalent, but is still there.
Right.
Um, and so it kind of alternates back and forth between the days that he spends at the memorial and the days that he's away,
Hmm.
and tells part of his story when he's talking to the person who's gone, and then part of the story when they're completely and totally not around.
Right.
um, and the conflicting things like how he feels at the memorial versus how he feels in his day to day.
It's there.
Because they're totally different. When you go
Correct.
somewhere with the intention of grieving, you're likely to feel one way. And when you're busy and
Hmm.
you forget for a minute, or everything you see makes you think of that person, or so it kind of goes back and forth for him.
Now, the question is, Samantha, fiction also reflects reality,
Yes.
and I know these are two fictional works, and uh, which I would say derive from your inner experiences, your personal experiences. So, how did you feel writing these lines?
It's a mixed emotion kind of thing where when you're writing it, it can really hurt. It can dredge up all these things that you thought you were over and that you shoved down, and then you finish writing it and you look at it and you go, "Wow." And you're kind of in shock that those things came out of your mind and you have to process the things that you weren't dealing with.
Right,
So it's very difficult. The emotional stories I find are far harder to write. I in Without You, without giving away too much plot, I had to think about the loss of a human being as a wife, as a daughter, as a friend, as a neighbor,
right,
um, and what that experience would be like kind of across the board.
right,
And, within stages of grief and Without You, I had to think about the differences in the types of death. Like, is it long and drawn out? Did you know it was coming? Was it unexpected and fast?
right,
Um,
right,
and as a mom, those kinds of things were difficult because I started thinking about my own children and my husband and my family and friends, and so it kind of scares you a little bit almost until you come to terms with it. But
correct,
it,
correct,
it is a very moving experience.
right.
I never expected to feel so many things in 90 pages, but
I could really, I can. easily relate to you because I lost both of my parents. And then when I lost my dad, I grieved a lot. But when I lost my mom, suddenly I realized that I was simply parentless and I was left alone, you know? And every day I wake up in the morning, I see both pictures on my desk. It reminds me of them. It's just like they're still living with them, with me, and my memories and the memories in my heart and my mind, and that's how I want as a writer when I'm gone. That's why I want to be remembered, and the heart and minds of those who love me and then the memories. This is
It's
how I think it should
interesting.
work.
It's really interesting. And when you think about people, we only know a person the way we experience them.
Correct.
And so when I was writing Without You and I was thinking about the character that passed, I was thinking about what would it be like to be the parent who knew that person. They know this person as this person, and then there's the husband who lost this person and they know that person as this person, and they're not always the same. Bits and pieces will overlap, but we're different around different people. My kids will know me as someone different than my students will. And when you lose someone,
True, true.
you,
So true.
everyone's someone different, so
So true.
and
Because I
that's
was
one
an
of the things I
educator
like.
myself, So true.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I really like about Without You is that at various points in the story, different family members and friends come together to discuss the person who has passed, and they've shared their stories together, things that only they might have known.
Right,
Um, and so it kind of creates her in the mind of the people who are left behind as a more complex person,
right, right,
and not just this one-dimensional figure like, hey, this was my daughter.
uh,
My daughter is this person.
right,
Your daughter
right.
is all of these people.
Of course, yes.
So,
So let me ask you a question, Samantha, because I know you're a multi-genre
yes.
author. So you've written in the area of literary fiction,
Yes.
which is mm, overwhelmingly accepted in academia.
Mhm.
You've also reading psychological, thriller, dystopian fantasy, I would say.
Yes.
So now this is my question. So with all these genre, which one you feel more comfortable?
Oh, I probably feel most comfortable writing in supernatural horror just because it's
Really?
fun. That's what Dealings in the Dark was. That's supernatural horror.
Can
And
you can you can you raise the book
oh,
again
sure.
so people can see it?
Yes,
Let's
Dealings in
see.
the Dark, supernatural and occult horror. So,
Okay.
it's the story of a 27-year-old magical practitioner named Alex.
Uh-huh.
She is alone for the first time. Her grandmother has been moved out of the home because she has memory issues. She's been moved to a care facility.
Right.
And her grandmother has been teaching her through her life how to protect herself, but has not taught her much else in the way of magic. And so now she has to kind of step into the role as a practitioner alone. And as
Uh-huh.
soon as she does, this demon named Iroth takes
Uh-huh.
advantage of the weakness and calls in a bargain that she made when she was 9 and she doesn't even remember making. So this covers the story only a couple of days as she tries to figure out the bargain and how to save her life. Um, and it was fun. I like to write something scary every Halloween too. So I've had something human and then something that'll keep you on the edge of your seat going. I try to
Now,
alternate between the two.
now they say one of the main reasons why so many readers, uh, fall in love with fantasy, in particular dystopian fantasy, is that of this beautiful and even magical escapism that it offers. Do you believe so?
Yes. With Dealings in the Dark, I agree. I mean, I tried to represent it as more of a modern witchcraft practitioner, like what
Right,
actual modern day practitioners do.
right.
So I have a little bit of reality mixed in with some of that fantastical, cinematic quality that you would
Okay.
expect from a scary book.
Hmm.
Um, but it's so interesting because you read it and you can just become Alex for a little while and deal with Alex's problems and not your own.
True.
So,
It's
yeah,
true.
and I don't know. I wrote this one for a whole different reason than
Uh-huh.
I wrote Stages and Without You. They kind of they access different parts of my brain, if that makes sense. Whereas Without You and Stages were more about processing trauma and creating this space where people could understand things in a different way.
Mhm.
Dealings in the Dark and its sequel, this is Bound and Betrayed, which just released in December.
Mhm.
These ones were about, finding the social commentary in the fantasy scary escapism.
Okay.
Um, so
Okay.
it's fun to weave in a little bit of real and a little bit of, out there and
Exactly. Exactly. So let me ask you a question in here now. Do you have or did you have a particular author who has influenced you growing up, knowing that someday I'm going to be in?
I've always read a ton of books growing up. I didn't have a specific genre or a specific author that I fell in love with until middle school.
Okay.
I have, the kids' Harry Potter obsession from the 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s. And then I fell in love with The Mortal Instruments, which was lots of supernatural creatures from Cassandra Clare. And then I started reading adult books very young. I was reading Anne Rice when I was in middle school and some Stephen King things. My mom is very big into supernatural horror books and movies alike, which is probably why I ended up loving my scary stories. So I think it was for me more about just some of the experiences I had growing up and in general. My dad loves to read tarot cards. Like I said, my mom has a
Okay.
Stephen
Okay.
King collection that's probably as big as the bookshelf behind you, and they're all first edition. We used to sit and watch scary movies, and I'd sit and cover my eyes, and she'd be like, "Oh, come on."
Uh-huh.
So I think it's just a collection of experiences more than the books itself. But
Okay.
I did start writing this one though after I read Year of the Witching
Hmm.
by, I believe it's Alexis Henderson. I absolutely loved that book.
Okay.
So that one actually kind of inspired this book.
I know you're a mom, daddy,
Yes,
you have a husband. I'm sure you also cook in the house, right?
sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, my husband is a fantastic cook, so he cooks most of
There's
the
so
time.
many. Let me ask you a question. So many of you female writers coming to the conversation, every time I ask this question, they say, "Oh, no, shut up." But my husband is such a
Yes.
great cook.
My husband is a phenomenal cook. He's an Eagle Scout, so he grew up cooking and, providing for other people. And so he cooks for us most of the time, and I do most of the cleaning to kind of even it out. But there are a few meals that are
Okay.
Samantha specific. I
Okay.
do the steaks, I do the burgers, I do, lots of like things that I don't have to worry about so much. They're kind of simpler, but lots of spice. Like not hot spice, but a cabinet full of spices.
Any particular cuisine that you really like and share with your husband?
My family is from Kentucky, so
Okay.
I grew up with a lot of fried food. I'm introducing vegetables more and more as an adult now that I have children.
Right.
But yeah, anything that's fried, particularly, I absolutely enjoy, fried chicken, mashed potatoes. My grandma used to make those for me when I was a kid, and she taught me how. I love steak and like the cubed red potatoes, very much like the potato girl. I know how to make them about 30 different ways. So,
30
uh,
days. Okay.
but he brings more culinary experience. I like I said, I grew up very much with Southern food, and then I grew up on some convenience foods and things sometimes because my parents are both really, really busy. My dad was a good cook, both of them. My biological dad used to work in restaurants. My stepdad, he cooked for us most of the time at home too.
Okay.
So I ate what they cooked, but we were all so busy. So I'm learning how to enjoy food more now as an adult.
Okay.
It's funny. I have two kids. One's 5 and one's 1. The 1-year-old is
Okay.
very happy because he's 1. But
Okay.
my 5-year-old, you think of a 5-year-old, you think, oh, they're gonna like McDonald's chicken nuggets, right? She is a goat cheese chicken kid.
Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
honey mustard on chicken breast with goat cheese and crushed pistachios. That's her favorite meal of all time. And asparagus, very specifically asparagus. So it's just funny how they grow up so differently.
Now let me ask you something. Let's switch from food into music. Any
Mhm.
particular genre in music that, or
Oh,
perhaps has influenced your writing?
yeah. Well, when I was very little, it was mostly country music. Like I said, my family came from Kentucky. As I got older, I was very much influenced by those emo pop punk bands like Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy. My Chemical Romance. I still listen to them a lot, but uh, they kind of work their way into some of my books. Actually, the one I'm working on right now, The Ruin, one of the characters listens to the music that I like in his car, just like a mixed variety of things, musical
Okay.
soundtracks and pump pop, and it's just funny how it sneaks into the things you write.
Okay. So let me go back to this last question. Not this last question, but uh, I know when you said growing up, there wasn't any particular author who influenced you. But right now, as an adult, I know writers read more than they write.
Yes. I read
Any
60 books last year.
particular author out there that Samantha would consider has her best,
Oh
hands
man.
down?
Right now, I am actually reading a Michigan author named J.R. Erickson right now. I'm reading through her
J.R.
Troubled
Pearson.
Spirits series. Love them. They're paranormal mysteries. I'm working my way through a couple of Stephen King books right now. And actually, Holly Jackson, I really like too. Her YA murder mystery series, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. I
Okay.
really enjoyed that one as well. Which is funny because my books don't tend to have a lot of that crime solving element yet. I write a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Um, but I don't know that they just inspire me to pick up my computer and start writing. So
And start writing. Okay. Now let's talk about your just briefly your the curse the series which is called the okay,
Cursed Souls, yeah.
the Cursed Souls series, and the
Yes.
two book and it dealing with in the dark and bound and betrayed.
Yes.
So I understand these two. The series does not end with two books, and there's
No.
one. There's even one in the work. So could you please tell us when we can lay our hands in the upcoming one? And you said
Yes.
there's no title yet for it.
Well, I have a title. I haven't officially announced it, but I'd be happy to tell you what the title is on here.
Okay, okay,
So Dealings in the Dark is book one. That one came out on October 1st of 2022. This was my spooky story for the year.
okay.
And I had this one written actually within a month because someone read Dealings in the Dark and sent me a message and said, "Where's the next one? I want
Within a
more."
month.
A month. Yeah, I work from home, which gives me more time when the kids are napping or something, sneak off and just, or if I'm rocking my kid to sleep, I'll type it on my phone
Right,
while he's
right, right,
snoozing.
right.
So I had Bound and Betrayed written within a month because well, one person said, I want the prequel, I want the sequel, I want the one that follows. Where are they? Well, I want them right now. And it was funny because this was going to be a standalone. Um, so yeah, so I wrote Bound and Betrayed next. I had that out with the draft of it out within a month. I had the whole thing done within a little under 3.
Mm.
And I got impatient and I pushed it out early. It was supposed to come out today, actually.
Really?
And
So
I
what
pushed it
happened?
out on December 21st.
Okay.
And then the next one, which I guess this is the official title reveal, is
Uh,
Legacy of Lies, which is going to come out in
Legacy of
September.
Lies. That's very intriguing.
Thank you. It's interesting because you think of book series and you think of sequels, and they typically stack on top of each other, one, two, three.
Uh-huh.
I'm building out before I go up.
Right.
So technically, Bound and Betrayed happens a little bit before Dealings in the Dark, and then they overlap. Legacy of Lies is going to go backwards. It's going to tell the main character's mother's story and her grandmother's story. So you have all the puzzle pieces together, and then it explodes into what happens after Dealings in the Dark in book 4, which
Right.
I'm really excited about.
So how many books you plan on writing in this particular series?
5. If I can get it
Five.
all done the way I want to, it'll be a 5-book series. Yep.
Okay.
Which is funny coming from a 1-book standalone going to a 5-book series, but
So my last question, Samantha. Okay, is there any advice or lesson you would want to give to someone, a young woman like you, who's married, who has a husband, who's writing in multi-genre, who's been so successful at doing it? So any particular advice you might want to give to them?
well, the first thing I always tell people is get out of your own way. because how many times have I written something down and thought, this is never going to be good enough. Nobody's ever going to want to read this, right?
Okay.
And I was stopping myself before I could ever get anywhere. That's not helpful at all. Get out of your own way.
Right.
Imposter syndrome is awful. It's real. Don't listen to it. Um, carve out that time for yourself. Writing these books is how I'm kind of finding myself outside of being a mom and a wife and a teacher and, all of these other things that demand so much of you that your brain just starts to feel
Right.
like static.
Right.
Carve out that time for yourself. Find that thing you're passionate about. If it's historical fiction, write something historical fiction. Don't try to force yourself to write something that's not there in your head. Write the things that you love. I have a list of story starters about this long, and I
Right.
chose these ones.
Okay.
And then the only thing I would say is there's two ways to approach the actual writing process. One is
Okay.
to write every day, and
Right.
one is to write when your body says it's okay. And so I went through Dealings in the Dark and Bound and Betrayed. I treated it like it was my job. I was putting something out right now. I was editing and showing beta readers, and I did it every single day. And it was exhausting. It was, but I imposed my own deadline, and I was dead set on meeting it. Because I'm that kind of person. I'm organized in deadlines, and I'm gonna go. I've got a deadline right now that I'm
True.
zooming towards. But there were days when I just was so tired,
Mm-hmm.
because it is draining. It's very draining to create whole worlds out of nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to respect that part of the process too. You have to listen to what your mind and your body need. If you come up across one of those days, you are not a failure as a writer. It's okay to take a step back and breathe. I know there's so much pressure to just keep going, like the Energizer
Right.
Bunny, but everybody has those days. you
True.
know take a
True.
step back, get a cup of tea, go take a
Mm-hmm.
shower, eat something,
Right. Right.
right? Because when I don't eat something, my brain is very mean to me. If
Right.
I don't eat something, um just listen to what your body is telling you that you need, because if you don't, you get burnout.
So with that, I'm just going to say it has been more than just a pleasure to have had this wonderful opportunity to speak with prolific writer out of Southwestern Michigan, Samantha Moran.
Thank you so much.